So let's now discuss the arc length and the area of surface of revolution. So we discuss arc length first and we proceed with surface area afterwards. So after this topic, I'm going to give you the assignment, and this will be the last assignment because the assignment for the application part, let's say the other application topic, which is work and liquid pressure. So I'm not going to give you an assignment, but I'm going to give you practice problems. So di lang siya i-submit. As well as for the improper integrals and the multiple integrals. So to begin with, so I think the main issue in every application problems or every application topics is that you have to graph your equations. And among the application topics that we have discussed so far, this would be the easiest one to graph because you are given an interval or you're already given a boundary condition. Okay. So for example, your function is y is equal to f of x. So this could be any equation. So all you have to do is to plug in the intervals, the limits, and that will be the first and last point of your curve, or depending on whatever equation is presented in your problem. Okay, so let's say for example on the left figure, let's say this is your curve here. So if you try to make an approximation, or let's say we're going to get a certain strip or a certain, let's say, representative strip. So in the case for the area, volume, centroid topics, so we took a vertical strip and that would represent the entire bounded region, diba? Katong vertical strip and horizontal strip. Now in this case, for arc length, we are just going to get a differential segment. Let's say P4 and P5. So of course, if you try to create many points along the curve line, once you get a certain segment, that particular segment would reflect um, a straight line, diba? Not totally a curved line, but a straight line. So let's say super gamay kayo, diba? Super gamay nga point, let's say kani siya in between point 4 and point 5, let's say kani siya dire. Yan kani siya, diba? Since we're just taking a very small portion of your curve, so that particular curve, excuse me, so that particular curve would represent a straight line. So dili siya totally curve. So probably it's a curve gamay. Sorry. So probably it's a curve gamay, but not totally curve nga wherein it's totally a large difference compared to a straight line. So in other words, instead of representing this segment, this differential segment as a curved line, so why not represent it as a straight line? So let's say this particular differential strip or differential segment is your ds. And once we translate that one into a particular line, so this one is now our ds. And how did you get dx and dy? So if we try to create a small triangle here, a right triangle, this would be our differential y, this would be our differential x. Okay, that's why you have dy here and then dx on the right side figure. So now your differential segment is now represented by a differential triangle, which is ds, dy, and dx. So as you can see in the formula below, so you have two formats. So one is in terms of x, derivative with respect, integral with respect to x. The other one is integral with respect to y. And of course, these dx and dy will be obtained depending on the interval given. So interval given may be in the format of x variable. So meaning if it's x variable gani ang inyong kuan, let's say this is the interval. So you're going to use the first formula which is respect to x. If it's in terms of y gani yung interval ninyo, so you're going to be integrating with respect to y as well. So ano na siya, it's again it's this one is the simplest application because you already have the given interval. So unlike the other topics wherein you have to solve first for the points of intersection for you to be able to get the boundary limits for your integrals. So dire is gihatag na sa inyo, di ba? And what's good here is you only graph one equation. Unlike the other topics wherein you have to graph two equations, then you need to be able to provide solutions on graphing those two equations. Aside from graphing those two equations, you also have to provide solutions for obtaining the points of intersection. So dire wala ra. All you have to do is to provide information or let's say basis on how you graph your equation because the limits are already given. So that's wonderful with this. That's what's good about this topic. So na siya yung mga limits daan. So the formula was derived using the Pythagorean theorem. So again, since we are not really interested with the derivation aspect, but the theorem used here is Pythagorean in deriving the equation. So as you can see here, nice square, diba? Then square root. So probably it became L squared, diba? So coming from ds squared is equal to um, dx squared plus dy squared. So this becomes the square root of, so this one is dx squared plus dy squared. So getting the integral, this becomes s integral of dx plus dy squared. And then further manipulation will give you now the solutions presented below. So the s becomes the length or the arc length. And then what's inside the equation or the integral symbol will depend on whether you're going to integrate with respect to x or with respect to y. That's why nasa different ways of manipulation. That's why na isa kay dx, ang isa kay dy. Okay? So again, the purpose of which ganon himo siyang straight line ng curve. So actually, if you try to look at a circle, diba? Polygon kay curve mo na, diba? Circle kay curve mo na siya. If you're going to create many different infinite points in between your circle and take away just two segments, diba? You're going to get a straight line. So let's say for example kani siya, diba? So once you try to zoom in the 2 points, so probably it's a straight line, diba? It's not totally a curved line. So that's why in some books, the circle is called a special polygon. Diba kay it has infinite number of sides. Diba ang definition of polygon is it's being defined by the number of sides. Pentagon, hexagon, nonagon, decagon, so on and so forth, depending on the number of sides sa ato ang polygon. So a circle, it's a special kind of polygon because it has infinite number of points. And if you just take 2 points from your circle, it is actually a straight line. So mura siya kanang kuan, di ba? So imagine starting from octagon, di ba? 8 sides. then let's say you have 100 sides, di ba? So mura siya kanang circle, di ba? But edgy lang siya nga circle, edging a circle. But if you plug in more points in your polygon, let's say 1,000 points. So mura siya smooth na gamay, di ba? So again, I'm talking about this one because ang purpose ato is ang pagkuha sa 2 points dire. Okay, but nevertheless, you just have to memorize this formula. So one for integrating with respect to x, The other one will be integrating with respect to y. So ana ra siya ka-simple. So I think this one is easy to memorize. So if you're integrating with respect to the x, so all you have to do is, all you have to remember is that dx is in the denominator inside the radical expression. Diba? Same goes for dy, diba? Nasa denominator. So one way of memorizing easily. Okay, so let's start with the problem. So again, I'm not going to show you how I graph this equation, but again, since you are now given the limits, so notice that you are given here the limits. So starting from 0, going to pi over 4. So this one should be our x sub 1. This one is our x sub 2. Okay? So if you want some basis on your graph, so all you have to do is to plug in the limits of integration. So at x is equal to 0, so y is equal to ln secant of 0, then y is equal to 0. So the first point is at 0 and 0. Then the other one would be, so let's say this is your first point. Then the other one would be at x equals pi over 4. So take note, since this one is in pi format, so once you plug in pi over 4 in your calculator, try to put your calculator in radian mode. Okay, so y is equal to ln secant pi over 4. Then y is equal to the specific value. And then you write, let's say, pi over 4 and then the equivalent value of the y. So, kani siya, pwede na siya mahimong solution for your graph or a basis for your graph. So, na evidence, diba, that you have created your graph. So, once you have your 2 points, and this one is not linear, so you just connect the dots. So, that is super simple, diba? So, next would be now establishing our equation. So, again, since the limit is in x variable, so meaning we are integrating with respect to x. So we're going to use this formula. L is equal to the integral of the square root of 1 plus, again, since we are integrating with respect to x, the denominator is dx as well. Then don't forget that it should be squared from x1 to x2. So if you're going to check for the variables that we need to determine, so we now have x1 and x2 given, diba? Here. What we don't have is dy over dx squared. So to do that is we're going to write first our equation. Y is equal to ln secant x. Diba kay there's no other equation presented in the problem except for this equation. So muna siya atong integrate. Okay? So remember that the derivative of ln is du over u. So dy over dx. Then this one is du all over u. So let's say this one is our u parameter. So we're going to get, so derivative of secant x is secant x tangent x all over u, which is secant x. Then cancel out secant x. So dy over dx is now equal to tangent x only. So muna siya katong u sub nga atong ibuhat before, but we just didn't multiply dx on the other side, diba? Ato lang gi-retain ang dx together with dy because that's the proper way of deriving equations. So sa atong u sub is ato lang siyang gi-multiply on the right side kay para atong ma-represent ang du sa ato ang pag u sub sa atong integration process. So diri is tibuok dy over dx ya. Okay, so of course, pwede gyapon siya mahimong dy over dy is equal to tangent x dx, di ba? But again, since we're not going to replace dx, so kanila itong gamiton, di ba? Because we are just going to replace dy over dx. Okay, so getting now dy over dx squared. So this is now tangent squared x. And now getting the length with respect to the formula. So you're going to have it as 0 to pi over 4. So prepare your calculator. Square root of 1 plus tangent squared x dx. So at this point, you may be up until here only with your calculation. But if you want to simplify further, para inyong ma-help out ang calculator, so 1 plus tangent squared x is actually a Pythagorean identity. So this further simplifies to 0 to pi over 4, and then square root of secant squared x dx. Or in other terms, you can also have it as pi over 4 and then secant only, di ba? So again, whether or not you're going to use this one or kaniba yung gamiton, so pareha lang magawa ang answer. Pero again, if you're going to put complicated equations in your calculator, it might take a bit longer for the answer to come out. Okay, so what would be the answer?
0.88, sir.
So 0.88 units. So it's units because we are measuring length, arc length. So again, pwede rin mo diri nga dapita ka ng complicated equation siya, or you may try to simplify the equation and then obtaining a simpler version of the equation para mas dali magawa ang answer. So 0.88 units. So again, don't forget to put your calculator in radian mode because you are applying pi over 4 as one of the limits. Okay, and then this would be the solution. So again, pwede mo kutob dire and then gawas din ang answer, di ba? Or you may try to simplify it, then get the answer. Since you're now allowed to use your calculator, di ba? So all you have to do is to set up your equations, and the next is to use your calculator afterwards, di ba? So muna, mangayo ko basis for the graph because everything else is um, in accordance with the format of the formula. Wala kailain daghan button, di ba? Then after getting the format of the formula, you then use your calculator. Okay, so questions before we proceed with the next example. Okay, so question.
Sir, wala na ilang ibutang sa kanang graph, sir.
Sa
Okay ra
graph,
na yun.
oh,
Yeah.
okay rin na. Okay, arc length naman ta.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
So unlike sa katong area, so dapat na to vertical strip, then you have to define y top, y bottom, so on and so forth. So there is just arc length, so dali na kay siya. Una, pinakasayo ni siya nga topic out of all the application topics discussed. Okay, so any other question? Okay, so hearing none, we proceed with the next one. So this time is we're going to be determining the length of x equals 2/3 of y minus 1 to the power of 3 halves between 1 and 4. So y is equal to and greater than 1 but less than and equal to 4. So muna yung timanan. So we are integrating with respect to y because our variable of our range is in y direction. So this is y1 and then this one is y2. Ay, sorry. Dali sa akin, nabuha kong kwan. Okay, so going back. So again, we are integrating with respect to y because our range is in the y direction. So 1 is your y sub 1, 4 is y sub 2. So again, if you're going to create some evidence with your graph, so you can just you can just take advantage of the range given. So at y is equal to 1, then plug in the equation. Plug in the range in the equation. So 2/3 times y, so that would be 1 minus 1 to the power of 3 halves. So this one is 0, so x is equal to 0. So the first point is at 0 and 1. So the other point would be at y is equal to 4. So x is equal to 2/3 times 4 minus 1, then to the power of 3 halves. Then you're going to get x is equal to something, probably 3.4 up in. Then you're going to put 3 point something and then 4. Okay, so that is for your evidence in your curve. So of course, para ma-well-define yung curve, so you may also plug in 2, 3, di ba? Y is equal to 2, y is equal to 3 para naamo yung mga points, di ba? Para kibawa mo unsa ang curve. Kaya if 2 points lang, so you may not know that if the curve is concave or convex, di ba? So it's best that you try to define mga points lang jud para kibawa mo sa iyang direction sa iyang curvature. Okay? So for the formula, again, we are now integrating with respect to y because the range is in the y direction. So y is equal to, L is equal to the integral of 1 plus, again, since we are now in y direction, so denominator is y also dy. dx over dy squared from y1 to y2. Again, we are looking for the dx over dy. So put in the formula first, 2/3 and then y minus 1 to the power of 3 halves. Okay? So dapat isolated ang x, di ba? Okay, we are deriving with respect to y. Para may mo siyang dx over dy. Okay, so dx over dy. So dx over dy, then deriving the right side. So 2/3. So this would be chain rule, di ba? Constant times the whole expression of y minus 1 to the power of 3 halves. Okay, so you're going to have it as 2/3 times 3 halves, bring down the exponent. But then y minus 1 to the power of, so 3 halves minus 1, that would now be 1 half. Then integrate what's inside the parenthesis. So the derivative of y minus 1 is just equal to 1. Then plus y minus 1, I'm sorry, to the power of 3 halves. Then derivative of 2/3 is 0. So normally, cancelled out na siya, di ba? So this one is also cancelled out. So what's left is just um, y minus 1 to the power of 1 half. Okay, so that would be for dx over dy. And then getting the square would result to, so this is now y minus 1 to the power of 1 half and then squared. So meaning dx over dy squared is just equal to y minus 1. So you may now use the formula. So this will give you the integral from 1 to 4, then square root of 1 plus y minus 1 dy. So again, you may try to use the equation directly and plug it in your calculator. But if you want to further simplify this simplifies to integral of 1 to 4 and then the square root of y only dy, because 1 will cancel each other out. Positive 1 and then negative 1. So since I already flashed the answer on the next slide, so this is 14 over 3 units. So mas dali siya, di ba, compared sa other topics. Okay, so questions before we proceed?
Sir,
Mm.
kanang sa after sa chain rule sir ba unsa na sir na ano na add
Ano na siya? Na?
ngano na additional sir kanang after sa chain rule sir ba sa second step.
Kani kay, kani siya, product rule sad siya, product rule. So kani siya,
Oh,
chain
sige.
rule and then product rule kay, marag mahimo siyang, kani siya u, kani siya inyo 2/3 kay u siya, and then kani siya inyo hang kuan kay v. Na.
Oh, sige.
So
Thank
muna
you sir.
siya
Thank you
u
sir.
dv plus v du. Anyo ang dv kay chain rule siya kay tungod sa exponent, di ba?
Mm. Ah, I see. Thank you sir.
Na. So marag man na siyang iyang representation kani siya. So ako lang ipakita kay para di niyo ma-miss out ang kuan, ang complete
Pero
solution.
sir, wala na sir nimo sir gihimo constant kanang 2/3 siya. Di ba murag gipagawas na nimo or
Wala, ako lang siyang gi-multiply. Ana siya dot dere. 2/3 na muna siyang u, then dv is the chain rule. Ano siya, 2/3 and then times the chain rule of y minus 1 to the power 3 halves, then plus v du dayon. Diba ang chain rule is katong ang
sige.
exponent na rule, diba? Nga murag nalay anang binomial sud sa parenthesis.
Yes sir. Yes sir.
So murag man na siya. So try ikuan lang niyo, i-try lang niyo kanang kay usually mo akong style if it's na constant. Ako siya siyang inaning style jud, like product rule jud siya. Wala ka, marag pagka-OC lang ba nga, dapat ka na ako makita nga ma-zero out ang next term, ana. Say, for example,
Pero
2,
sir, if like, ano ragi, pag gawas ng constant na chain rule ra, okay ra magyapon na.
pareha ra gyapon na siya.
Okay,
Pareha ra
sir.
siya.
Thank you, sir.
Kay murag inani ra ba,
Sir.
di ba? Murag 2/3 x squared, then you're going to get 2/3 nga, then imo siyang i-derive ang sud, di ba? Na 2x.
Yes, sir.
So ang gawas kay 4/3 gyapon, 4/3 x. But if ako siyang i-UDV, so may mo siyang taas-taas siya. Medyo taas-taas siya kay 2/3 times 2x plus x squared and then times 0. Ano, murag taas-taas lang siya.
Yeah, taas, sir. Sige. Thank you, sir.
Sige, sige. Okay, so that's the answer, 14/3. So again, you may just plug this one in your calculator or the simpler version, which is this one. Okay, question? Wala na question. Sige, so if there's no question, let's proceed with surface area. So since dali naman kaya ang arc length, so I'll give you the next topic, which is about surface area. So all you have to do is to determine the arc length first. Let's say this one is the arc length, and then you rotate at a certain axis, depending on what the problem is directing you to rotate to. So whether it's the x or y axis, or any given line, kay mogya pa na siya, di ba? So let's say you're going to rotate about the x-axis here. So notice that this one is going to create a surface area. So just a surface, di ba? If it's area, ang rotate, it will create a volume. But if it's only a line or an arc length, it's going to create a surface area. And I think what's the difference here compared with the with the arc length topic is that you're just going to add 2 pi and then the certain radius with respect to the axis of rotation. So nagmura na siya ang mapuno sa inyong equation. The same formula but nalay na puno gamay. Okay? So this would be the formula. So one would be rotating about the x-axis. One would be rotating about the y-axis. So if it's rotating about the x-axis, notice on sinapuno. 2 pi y. So why is it y? Why is not x? Why is the variable y not x? So let's say you're going to get this point here, kaning P3 and P4. So if I'm going to rotate this particular strip, or let's say this segment, notice that this one is my referring radius with respect to the x-axis. So let's say this one is my radius. And this radius is defined by this point on the line, which is the equation given, diba? That's why it is equal to y only. Diba? So if I want to get this point, all I have to do is to determine this particular x value, then plug it in the y equation, diba? Okay, it's touching the line. So akong pasabot is, for example, you have a line here, diba? And let's say this one is 1, this one is 5, baron. If I want to determine this point of the line, let's say this value is 4, x is equal to 4. So all I have to do is plug in x in the equation sa line, di ba? So muna siya ang bot pasabotan ng radius dire. So if I want to get this particular distance na radius, so all I have to do is plug in a certain value of x, di ba? But since we are representing it as a whole, so you represent your radius as the y function. That's why it's 2 pi y. So again, since we are rotating about the x-axis, 2 pi is the whole revolution, one complete revolution. And then y would be the radius. Diba? Murag same man na siya sa surface area sa inyong cylinder. So cylinder, aside from the top and bottom circles, the lateral surface area of your cylinder is lateral area is equal to 2 pi RH. Diba? So 2 pi r is this one, the one encircled in the formula, 2 pi y in this case. H would be coming from the line here. Diba? Kaning line rotate about, let's say, the y-axis. Diba? So in our case, our H is the arc length, which is this formula here, coming from the previous topic. So again, ang napuno rana is ang radius lang, 2 pi times the radius. So if it's in the y-axis, so of course, this would become our radius, diba? So for example, you're going to rotate P0 and P1. So this one would be our radius. So radius is equal to x. That's why you have 2 pi x here. So always remember that the radius, so para di mo maglibog ha, para if you're going to transcend into the surface area ng problem, so always take note that the radius is perpendicular to the axis of rotation. Perpendicular to the axis of rotation. So I think it's the same as the volume. Ang vertical strip is perpendicular with the axis of rotation. Same goes with the horizontal strip. It's perpendicular with the y-axis because muna siya yung axis of rotation. Okay, so let's try and solve now some problem. So I just drew the whole graph now. But if kamo dapat start from scratch mo. So again, we know that we are integrating with respect to x and then rotating about the y-axis. I mean the x-axis rather. Okay. So again, if you want to get your graph in a fast manner, so the other way would be to use the table format. So table format, so you can use your calculator shortcut with this one. So table format would be, let's say this one is your x value, this one is your y value, starting from -2 going towards 2, diba? -2, 1, 0, 1, and then 2. Diba? So you can use your calculator, table mode. Mode 7, mas na siya, ang table. I think it's mode 7, and then katong ito lang yung paglas ka ni katong steps. Katong f of x is equal to a certain quantity, diba? And then you put the certain start, diba? Mangayo siya start, mangayo siya og end, and then mangayo siya og step. So the step would be the interval. So in this case, it's equal to 1. So start with -2 and with 2, and then your equation would be square root of 9 minus alpha x squared. Then you have certain values of your y. So let's say 2 and then 1 and then 0 and then 1 and then 2. Okay, and then you rotate up in the y direction. I mean in the x direction. So this would be your surface area. So dapat with drawing inyong answer kay if y drawing klaro kayo gitikas yun na inyong answer jud kay y drawing. Para makaingon ko nga may kay inyong visualization kay naka-answer mo without a drawing. Diba? So dapat with drawing inyong answer. Para way daghang pangutana, di ba? Kay of course sa mag-check pod, mag-doubt pod ta if tinuod ba inyong gisolve, di ba, or dili. Okay, so this time is we're going to get we're going to use now the formula. So 2 pi integral of, again, we're rotating about the x-axis, so our radius is y, and then square root of 1 plus, again, since we are in x direction, so that would be dy over dx squared. So from x1 to x2. So again, your y, the radius, will be defined by a certain point on the line. So let's say that would be your radius y. So y is equal to the square root of 9 minus x squared. Diba? So okay na siya. The other problem would be the other kaning dy over dx. So for us to be able to derive this one in an easy manner, so all I have to do is to change this one into its exponential format. So 9 minus x squared to the power of 1 half. And then you use chain rule, diba? So dy over dx would give you 1 half there first. So 1 half first, then bring down the exponent, 9 minus x squared. And then 1 half minus 1, that would give us negative 1 half. And then you try to derive again what's inside the parenthesis. So 9 is 0 minus negative 2x. Okay, so cancel out 2 here, cancel out another 2 here. Then what's left is dy over dx is equal to x all over the square root of 9 minus x squared. Okay, and then getting the square root, I mean the square, libo na kayo, no? Daghan na kay square root, square, squared. Then this gives you x squared all over 9 minus x squared. So of course, kaning x squared ha, dili na siya makancel because you have a binomial in the denominator. It's a complete factor. Kani siya, di ba? Complete factor ni siya. So dili niyo ma-cancel out ang inyong x squared and x squared sa numerator and denominator because ang denominator is a whole factor which is 9 minus x squared. Okay, so you now have this one. You also have x1 and x2, which is negative 2 to 2. And you're now ready to answer your arc length. I mean your surface area. So this one is not LDI, but it's kuanday. It's SA. Okay, question?
Sir, nawala lagi ang negative sa negative 2x.
And it's negative this. Negative siya diri lang napita. Wait sa. So kani siya negative diri but in kuani mo wala siya negative kay square naman.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
So this one should be surface area day. SA. Okay, so solving now the equation. So you now have 2 pi integral of, so again our y is this one, diba? So you're going to have the square root of 9 minus x squared, then times the square root of 1 plus x squared over 9 minus x squared dx from negative 2 to 2. So again, you can just plug this one in your calculator, but for me, I want to simplify this one because it can be simplified. So all you have to do is to expand first what's inside the right radical expression. So if I'm going to isolate this one, so ako lang i-change yung color para makasave tog space. So if I'm going to simplify this one, this becomes 9 minus x squared plus x squared all over 9 minus x squared. And then square, diba? So I can cancel out x, negative x squared and positive x squared, and this will give me the square root of 9 all over 9 minus x squared. Okay? So if I multiply this one with the other 9 minus x squared, diba? So change color na sa gawa. Okay, para. So if I'm going to multiply this one with the other format, so this becomes 2 pi integral of negative 2. So square root of 9 minus x squared, then multiplied by 9, square root of 9 minus x squared, 9 minus x squared. So I can cancel out this one and this one, diba? Because this one can be separated into two radical expressions. So square root of 9 divided by square root of 9 minus x squared. Malapit din siya makancel out. So what's left is just 2 pi from negative 2 to 2 and then square root of 9, diba? So square root of 9 is just 3. 3 dx. So mas dali ang answer, diba? Compared sa other variable. So again, pwede rin yun ni taas, but it will take some time, Jud. Okay, so what would be the answer? So surface area is equal to,
24 pi, sir.
24 pi, sir.
so 24 pi. So ako lang ibutang dali. Surface area is equal to 24 pi, and then don't forget the square units. Okay, so questions before we proceed? Okay, so there's no question. So this would be the solution. So take note how the kanang gawin sa siya pag simplify. Okay, so this time we go to another problem. So we are now given a y range from 1 to 2, then rotating about the y-axis. Okay, so for example, you plug in 1 and 2 in the given equation. So this is what you'll be getting, this point here. Then you rotate about the y-axis. So rotate this one. So mura siya og funnel, di ba? If mo siyang ikuan. Sobra siya og funnel. So again, dapat na-drawing inyong solusyon na kay. If I drawing, so imposible ka na kaya siya na-solve nga walay drawing. Possible man good siya, pero again, we need a drawing for it to be legit, diba? Or for it to be a genuine answer. Okay, so first things first is you graph your equation. So probably you have here at y is equal to 1 first, and then you're going to plug in 1 is equal to the cube root of x. Then you're going to get the cube, 1 cube. So x is equal to 1. Then the other one would be at at y is equal to 2. So that would be 2 is equal to cube root of x. Then that's going to be 8 is equal to x, or x is equal to 8. Then the other one would be 8 and then 2. So this would already be sufficient for, this would be enough for your evidence for your graph. Okay, since you only have 2 points. Okay, so next is we're going to have the formula first. So again, we are having a range of y, so meaning we are integrating with respect to y, and we are rotating about the y-axis. So surface area is equal to 2 pi. So again, our radius is x, diba? X, and then the square root of 1 plus, since we're in the y component, no, so dx over dy squared, and then dy. Okay, so let's have our x variable first. So our x variable should be this one, diba? The given equation. But since it's not isolated in x yet, so ato siyang i-isolate into its corresponding variable. So cube root of x is equal to y. Then take the cube of the whole equation. So this will give us x is equal to y cubed. Okay, so we now have your first equation as your x here. So next is getting dx over dy squared. So dx over dy, then getting the derivative here, which is 3y squared. Getting the square of your first derivative, so this would give us dx over dy squared is equivalent to 9y to the power of 4. So this is now also complete. So what's lacking in our equation is atong limits of integration, so we forgot to write it in the, so from y1 to y2. Okay, so this is now 2 pi from 1 to 2. Then our x variable is y cubed. Then the square root of 1 plus 9y to the power of 4 dy. So kana pili ra siya kani kuan, and then you get the answer directly. So in square units.
1.99, sir. Square units.
1.99?
Oh, 199.4
Ah, 199.
or 5 rather.
Sige, 1.5. So probably if you try to look at the equation, so medyo imposible na kaya siya i-simplify, di ba? So kana pwede siya as is. So kana medyo mapugos mo mag-wait sa answer kay hindi naman siya ma-further simplify din yung equation. So unlike the other problems wherein you can simplify your equations, so kato na mo yung option nga magawa sa answer directly. Okay, and then this would be the answer. So you could have it as 2 decimal places lang siguro para uniform lang ta. Uniform ang atong answer. But at least you can also help me with the checking part if taga kay decimal or let's say kung decimal, extra effort pa siya sa akong part para mag-evaluate sa mga rounding off. So probably 2 decimal places would be fine para dili kita magkalisod sa ato ang Okay, so any questions so far?
None, sir.
None so far, sir.
Okay, sige. So kadali lang ah. So since I'll be giving the last assignment, so muna siya last assignment, and then the other two topics will have no assignment but only practice. I will give you a practice problems para na may somewhat a review material for the midterm exam. And then aside from that, katong mga wala ka take sa exam, so I don't know ano wala maka-take sa exam or unsa. And aside from that, before the so sa daghang kay sige email ako about ani if unsaon pagbawi sa kuan sa grade ana. So to give you a breakdown of your final grade, so it comprises of 3 elements. So one would be your assignment. That would be 20% of the final grade. And then the next one would be the midterm exam. That is only 30% of the final grade. Then lastly would be the final exam, which is a major part of the grade, which is 50%. So why is it 50% for the final exam? Because the coverage is from start to finish. That's why 50% ang iyang weight. Mas bukat siya kay you're going to review topics from the start up until the finish. For midterm exam, it's only 30% because you are only covering half of the topics up until midterms only. That's why it's only 30%. It's not the same weight as the final exam because it's only covering half the topics. So dapat ganit 25% lang ni siya. But ang akong condition dire is again this one is the final grade. FG is final grade, and this one is what will reflect in your TOR or in your transcript of your records. So this is equal to 100%, and 100% is equal to 1.0. Okay. So I don't know if it's 50% pa ang 3.0 or 70%. So I have to verify this one with the EM coordinator kaya mag-meeting mi karong hapon sad. So I don't know which is the 3.0 part, ang 70% pa or ang 50%, but ano siya. So aside from that is that before achieving your final grade, so dapat complete ang yung assignment. So katong wala pa kasabit og assignment, and let's say you are able to take the exam but you are lacking assignment, I'll give you a grade of INC. So dapat complete ang assignment. If till you complete ang assignment, INC lang sa up until you comply with the requirements. Yan, dali naman assignment, diba? Pwede rin mo magamit og symbol lab if tapulon dyan mo. If di nyo tinudod ng answer, mag symbol lab lagi ang uban, diba? So, wala akong condition. So, ako yung mga students before nga INC sila up until they were able to comply with the lacking assignments sa ilang kuan. Okay, so muna sa to answer all the queries sa on how to make bawi or on sa muna siya. So you have to make bawi sa final exam kay muna siya ang big part. Muna siya ang bigger weight because it is ang isa muna siya ang bigger weight kay the coverage is from start to finish. Okay, so this would be the assignment. It's let me try to search it first. So this would be the assignment. So let me try to break it down to you para mas makuratan mo og unsa pasabot sa number 1 and 2. So for number 1 and 2, you have just to evaluate up until here only, meaning it's only setting up the equation. Okay, it's not totally getting the length. Ba? Same goes for this one.
So sir, basta ma-set up ra na mga formula sir, okay na na sir.
Basta maset up lang formula, okay na siya. As long as you follow the dy over dx, dx over dy. So for number 3 and 4, muna siyang determine the length dyan. So meaning, na-graph, na-evidence sa graph, solution sa graph, and then of course the solution for getting the length. So muna siya ang yung button sa assignment. Okay, question?
So, why graph sa kanang 1 ug 2, sir?
Wala ra.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Kaya ang pag-set up naman na sa equation. Okay. Okay, and then the other one, the arc length. So it's only 4 problems for arc length and then 5 problems for surface area. So same as number the previous slide. So 1, 2, 3, you just have to set up your equation. Diba? So basahan lang, diba? Do not evaluate. Do not evaluate. Do not evaluate. So you only evaluate in number 4 and 5. So diri na lang mga drawings, mga etc. so on and so forth. Okay, find the surface area. Find the surface area. Find the surface area as well in number 5. Okay, so of course, napoy mo yung answer set as well. Okay, para dili mo makuha answer. So natay answer diri. So try to take a screenshot of this one. Or try to review the recording later para pwede nyo siya i-pause lang sa yung YouTube.